The story that you share in the book, where you talk about your husband Bill of 46 years, writes you a letter letting you know that he wanted a divorce. How on earth do you move on in life and actually let go of the rage?
I thought everything was fine. I was happy with what I was doing, what we were doing. We'd started so many different things and worked so hard to create the world of holistic medicine and all of that. And all of a sudden, I get this letter saying that he needed to have a divorce. I just couldn't believe it. I thought God didn't understand anything that was going on in this dimension, and I was just there by myself, trying to find which way to go. And I was driving down to my house, which was now empty, and I was there by myself in Casa Grande from Phoenix. And I was screaming and yelling at God. I mean, or whoever was around. I just, it didn't matter who was around because I was just making a loud noise. And all of a sudden, I pulled over to the side of the road and I stopped the car and I just took some deep breaths and sat there for a while. And then I said, okay, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Of course, my name is Gladys. So I then went back to my house and changed my license plate to Be Glad. Not just to remind me, but to remind other people too, that life was really good and to be glad. And that started me looking for what I really needed to find, which was where I was going to go from there. And it turned out just fine. But it was a pivotal moment in time when I really, really had to make a noise. I had to weep.
Yeah, Gladys, that story shook me so much because, for context, he sent you a letter, but he also sent that exact same letter to all 6 of your children and the people, I believe, were on the board of directors of your company. And you had no idea that he wanted a divorce. And when I think of 46 years, I kind of think in those moments, you're like, okay, this is going to be for the rest of my life. But to experience that for so many people would crush them to their core and they'd never be able to get back up. And you even said that, although my divorce felt like the end of my life, I am here to tell you 34 wonderful years later, it wasn't. And when I take that one story, that you screaming in the car, that, to your point, is such an incredible pivotal moment that ended up allowing you to still live. And so I'd love to go a little deeper on this story, because you also said for you to be able to get over it, you used to live in the notion of, what's it like for someone else? Live in their shoes. And so you put on his slippers for an entire day and walked around the house to imagine what it was like for him. First of all, please explain to me how you can have such beautiful grace to try and see it from his perspective. And then secondly, what did you learn by walking in his slippers?
That they didn't fit my feet. So walking in his slippers kind of made me realize that we had walked this same path all these years, and we had done the things that we had done, and they were amazing. And at that point, then, I began to recall what we had done, and I started to focus on what had been accomplished, what we had, and not what I had lost. Because as long as I was feeling the pain of the loss, I absolutely couldn't move, except just shuffle around in these old slippers. But when I began to think about the amazing life that we had had and the experiences we had had in the field of medicine and the people that we had worked with, amazing people all around the world, and the trips that we had climbed the pyramid together and been to Cambodia together and all these things. There was just too much good stuff for me to keep telling myself that it was all bad. I mean, I just had to start being glad that I had all this time. It wasn't a misused time. It was a well-used time that I could reclaim what we had done. And it worked.
That's just amazing. In those moments, how did the pain though not overtake the joy? Because in your book, you really do talk about the beauty of a choice. And so in that moment, was it that you literally just chose joy over the pain?
I began looking for joy. I stopped looking for pain. I began looking for joy. And it was a difference. I mean, I was still healthy. I was strong. I had patience. I had work to do. And I could focus on that, not what I was losing.
Wow, that's so beautiful. That is honestly it's these moments, Gladys, that I think can either break us or really point us in a direction that allows us to be who we truly are. And your work is just incredible. The amount of people that you have helped in your 102 years is just insane. And so thinking about what life would have been like if you hadn't thought like that, what life would have been like if you hadn't acted like that, and you wouldn't have then gone on to help so many people if you got stuck in that moment of heartbreak, which so many of us do. And as I was hearing your story and reading your story, there's also one other moment where he ended up marrying somebody else. And I believe that you said somebody who was more submissive. How do you process that and not live with any regret of how you showed up in that marriage?
Here's what happened. I started thinking about who I was. I'd always been thinking about that, but then I identified within myself Dr. Gladys and Gladys. And now Dr. Gladys is the one that kind of keeps an eye on where we're supposed to be going. And Gladys does the work that has to be done on this level. And every so often, Dr. Gladys is doing something that she is really likes to be doing and something. And Dr. Gladys will come either with a dream or something is said or something like that. Be glad happens. And I shake my head and say, oh, all right. I hear you. And then try to redirect, because I really had to find the reality that was my voice. When I said it, it was saying what I wanted to say. And so I didn't need anybody else to validate it. And that was a big aha, because it was coming from deep inside me.
Had you, in the past, looked for validation in external sources?
Oh, absolutely. I see, when I started school and became the class dummy for 2 years, I really, really thought that I couldn't read or write. I mean, I was dyslexic and that was it. And so I was the class dummy. But that was a deep scar in my psyche. So that for years, up until I was 93, I really, I would write something and I'd ask Bill to look over it, or I'd ask somebody else to look over it. or I would say something from the pulpit and I would refer it to some. In other words, I was saying things and then constantly, actually, and I didn't know I was doing this, I was saying things and then denying them by referring to somebody else having been said. In other words, I was not giving it my voice.
Yeah.
And so when I was 93, I had a dream. And all through my life, I've listened to my dreams. So this wasn't a new thing. But I woke up and it was a Sunday morning, and I knew it was a Sunday morning. But I was singing and laughing as I woke up, and the dream was still kind of going on. And I saw myself as 9-year-old Gladys in the jungles of North India, coming out of our tent and just pulling the tent flap back to make sure my younger brother wasn't out there, because I knew what I was wanting to do, and he would tattle on me if I did it, and I'd be in trouble. Well, he wasn't there, so I could do it. So I ran as fast as I could up the tree, mango tree, clear up to the top. And I'm sitting up there and I'm singing. I'm singing any old song that I wanted to sing, caterpillar song or anything, because in our life, we were not allowed to sing anything but hymns or bhajans on Sunday mornings. And I thought that was a stupid rule. And I wasn't, I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I was singing away. And all of a sudden I look over my shoulder and Jesus is up in the tree with me. And he's laughing. He's really laughing. And I say to him, Jesus loves the little children, right? And he laughs and he says, yes. So I go back to my singing. And then I get to thinking, did he really say that, And I look back at him and I say, I'm still a little children, right? And he laughs harder and he says, yes. So I go back to my singing, and that's when I woke up. And when I woke up, I realized that if Jesus could say my voice is okay, I'm all right, boy. I'm really okay. And I began to claim my voice, and I stopped doing the stuff that I'd been doing prior to this, which was devaluing. And in the process of devaluing my voice, I was devaluing who I was, because that really, my voice was important. And reclaiming that was huge.
Oh my God, I love that story so much, Gladys. And especially, it's kind of crazy to think that you learned that at, 93 years old, because so many of us, well, hopefully, I really very much plan to live into my hundreds. But a lot of people don't actually get to that age. And so the fact that you were able to still have an aha moment and realize that validation and the importance of your own voice is so incredible and powerful. How were you able to then, like, if someone was listening right now and they don't feel like they're valid or they don't feel like they have a voice, how would they start to actually believe it based on your story and your experience? They don't have to wait, hopefully, until 93 to experience it.
Well, number one, do pay attention to your dreams. Number two, look back on what you have done, what you have said. If you're, say, 56, and for 56 years, you've been affirming certain things, or looking at life in a certain way, look at it again, take another look at it, and see if you really feel gratitude about what it is that you're doing. It's like my oldest daughter, who died of breast cancer when she was 58. She and I had done a lecture together, and somebody came up afterwards and was asking me for what my secret was. for life. And I was trying to come up with something cute or smart or something. And all of a sudden I get the elbow from my daughter. She says, "Oh, Mom, you do so know. You dwell in gratitude." And I said, "Oh, yeah, sure." And I reclaimed that at that point. And it has been a real blessing. I think if we could just begin to look at our lives and see the things that are there that are so awesome, it allows us to reconnect with life and be part of some living process, because life has to move, and it's all based on love. I mean, the reality of love is that love is a great healer. It's a great healer for everything. I had a good friend who as he got older, he moved into dementia and was having a hard time, and we had him in a lovely home and taking care of him that way. And so this one day I brought him a little plant and I put it in his window, and I said, "James, now this little plant, you need to take care of it. You need to take care of it because it needs water, and you need to take care of it." So I didn't know how much he understood and how much he didn't. But when I came back a week or two later, he greeted me and he said, look at this box. There's magic here." He said, "This is magic." And he went up to the air conditioning box on his wall and he says, "If I push this button, it gets hot in this room and my plant doesn't like it. But if I push this button, it gets cool in this room and my plant likes it." All of a sudden, he had something to live for. And he lived about 5 more years, but it was a time where I could really do something that allowed him to feel the connection with that plant. And, we're given opportunities like that if we're looking for them. Because, we have people like James in our lives who have something really that has gotten them stuck, or there is actually a process that has diminished their cognition, but they're still alive. And if they can find something, if we can help them find something that allows them to still function, it helps. It helps us. It helps them.
That's such a beautiful story. I love that so much. And I actually would love to then go to your other secret, which is secret number 3, love is the most powerful medicine. Now, Dr. Gladys, when I grabbed your book, I didn't know what to expect. But I was like, I'm very open. Anybody who has lived an incredibly wise life like yourself, I am going to listen. But I definitely expected your book to be about nutrition and sleep and getting air. And the fact that this was such a strong one, that love is the most powerful medicine, really hit me very hard. And you talk in the book about the difference between love and fear, and that fear is the blocker to love. So can you talk to me a little about that and how many of us move towards fear, but instead, how do we move towards love, especially if you've been burned in the past by love, especially if you've been betrayed in the past by love? How do you make sure that you keep moving towards it and don't move away from it?
Well, you can find the light in the darkness if you're looking for it. But if you're not looking for it, you will never see it. I kind of see my life, I have a flashlight on as I'm walking down my path, okay? And it's dark and I can't see any farther than where my flashlight goes. So I take one step at a time and I can continue to walk down that path. But as I'm walking down that path, if I see a little glimmer of light over to the side and then shine my flashlight onto that little glimmer, it'll light up the whole light for that person. It's that kind of a way of walking down a dark path, because you're not just looking for what step you can take forward, but you're looking for the rest of the path too. And there's people and things and so on out there that you might see if you were looking for them. And when you do see them, and they are maybe just a little flicker, and you put your light on it, it may light up the whole world for that person.
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now.
How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 steps to becoming confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside. That's so beautiful and powerful, but how do you, when you have been stung or if you've had the heartbreak, sometimes the light, they say, look for the light at the end of the tunnel. Some people are so fearful that the light at the end of the tunnel is actually an oncoming train. And I heard that analogy once and I was like, wow, that's really interesting on how 2 different people can see light in different ways. But in your book, you talk so beautifully about making sure that you always let the love in, right? So the love being the light, that you're always letting that in. If you're fearful that the light is an oncoming train, how do you change your perspective so that you actually keep moving towards it and you're allowing the love in? Because I don't know about you, Gladys, but I've met a lot of people who just have stopped looking. They've just stopped looking for love. They've stopped trying because they've been hurt, because they've been scarred by maybe the oncoming train. They just stop. And if I take your words for as wisdom very seriously, Dr. Gladys. And so when I take it very seriously and I understand the importance of love, how can we open someone's heart to that may be listening right now to let that love back in?
Because if you focus on the fear and the pain, you're stuck. You can't move forward. It's like if you have a cut on your arm and you keep picking at the scab, it's never going to heal. But if you treat it and let it go and don't go on about your life, and sometime later you come back and you look at your arm and you see a scar and you say, oh, hello, I know who you are. You remember the scar, but you don't remember the pain, because that's not what your life has been all about. It's again a choice. It's what you choose. I finally, this divorce thing was so painful for me, but I finally realized that I had a choice for whether I was going to dwell on what we had lost or what we had done when we were working together, when we created the American Holistic Medical Association, the Academy for Parapsychology and Medicine, and all the stuff we had done together. And I thought, wow, this is great. We really did good stuff. So I finally decided that I don't regret 1 minute that I spent with Bill McGarey. And then he took a vacation. That's his business. It's not mine anymore. I don't need to fuss with that. He could do what he did. He died about 10 years ago now. And it's a matter of reclaiming the essence of life. I mean, the very joy that is part of waking up in the morning and taking a deep breath and say, huh, another new day. You know, and it can happen. Just try it. You know, if you feel like you're stuck and everything is so bad, you could wake up in the morning and say, oh, you mumble, mumble. Or you could wake up and look for the light or something, what's happening, and take a deep breath and see if there isn't something. There has to be something in your environment that's alive and would be. I've got this stupid woodpecker that wakes me up in the mornings, you know, and I've got a conversation going with him because he pecks on my roof and I have to say, you go away, and he pecks on my roof again and we have a conversation. But it's that kind of things, they happen, you know.
Yeah, I love that so much. I also want to go to your next or your secret number 4, which is you are never truly alone. And it really hit me where you say loneliness is as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And I have another quote of yours that just was so impactful on me. You said, marriage in general is associated with decreased risk of vascular disease. Troubled marriages are associated with increased risk. The quality of our relationships at age 50 is the greatest predictor of our health and well-being at age 80. And so when I think about loneliness, and even loneliness within a marriage, because if you have a bad marriage, to your point, is that it can actually increase your likelihood of cardiovascular disease. Talk to me about how we don't allow ourselves to stay alone, to stay lonely, especially in today's society where I think so many people are retreating.
Well, when you understand that there are other people that are alone, then this, for me, this visual of having a flashlight and being able to see a glimmer of light around you is, for me, is a good visual, you know, because it doesn't expect big things. They can happen. You know, you can hear a song and all of a sudden, oh yes. Or you could look at the face of a baby and that baby smiles at you and all of a sudden life comes in. Or it may be that you have somebody in your life who is, you know, you don't particularly like, and you really can't get yourself to say that you love them, but is there something about them that you could like? It's like this person that I know who is difficult person. Our personalities don't really go together, but he's a great gardener. I mean, and all that kind of stuff. It's just amazing. But I have to admit that because he really is a great gardener, and he's got a really nice head of hair in his old age. So, but you know, those are things that I can actually accept and say to myself, all right, the others are difficult, but here's something that is really nice about this certain person. So it's what we're looking for, you know. I think we as human beings are looking for our true humanity. What A.T. was looking for when he was reaching for home. I think we within our inner being have the juice, the physician within, call it what you may, but that aspect of ourselves and the person that is in this body, that is working in this body, has access to that actual juice that's there if they recognize it and if they begin to work with it. And I see that in the eyes and faces of people as I meet them all the time. And I could not in my wildest imagination ever imagine being able to talk to you like we're doing right now. I mean, think about how the world has been brought together so that we can share the things that we think are important in this life. We can share anything else we want to, but the things that are really what you're saying, what I'm trying to say, what we're working together to build, I think is a village for living medicine, which can be any place in this world where we are looking for life and love as the true healers, and that's our focus in the things that we do.
That's so beautiful. In everything you were just saying, where does self-love fit in? Where does self-care fit in? Because I think that, again, in today's society, we are very much, and I'm not even today's society, in reading your story, you're such a giver. You've given your entire life. And so where does that self-love come in? Because as we're talking about giving love to others, being there for others, reciprocating and us going back and forth in order to help people, where does the self-love come in, and how important do you feel that is when it comes to being able to show up for other people?
You have to have self-love in order to be able to love other people. Mm-hmm. If you haven't even juiced your own self, how are you having the juice enough to share with other people? It's, you have to, it's like with a pregnancy, the mother has to eat and sleep and do the things so the baby can live. But as long as we have within us that essence of who we really are, and we don't even accept the responsibility of taking care of it and loving it like we would with a pregnancy, then life is so sad. But if we actually realize that within us, there's something pretty neat going on, and it feels good to love that aspect. I call it going down memory lane. At night when you can't sleep, instead of worrying about not sleeping, in which case you won't sleep, if you can just say, oh, I remember when, and you go down that lane, nobody else can have that memory the way you do, and no one can take it away from you. No one can take those memories away from you. So as you reclaim them when you're trying to go to sleep or whatever, or when things are really nasty, if you can reclaim some aspect of your whole life at that time that allows you to feel, I can keep on breathing, and yes, that you can affirm, as you affirm yourself, you affirm life, and you affirm love, and your life changes.
Oh, you just blew my mind with that. I've never thought about thinking about it as like a pregnancy and how that leads to affirming yourself. Wow, that was so powerful. So I'm definitely going to use that analogy from now on. I actually don't have children, but I'm definitely going to use that analogy. I totally understand how fueling yourself would then allow you to fuel others, allow you to find the love. So talk to me about your 5 L's. I found this absolutely fascinating. Again, it's so, it's almost counterintuitive of how I normally think. And so if you don't mind breaking that down, it's just changed my life.
Yeah, helped me to sort of get some structure in my thinking. Life and love have to go together. Life by itself is like a seed in the pyramid. It has a shell around it, and it has all the energy of the universe within it, but it can't do anything until love, in the way of light and water and so on, activates it, cracks the shell, and then life manifests, and it can do it. But life and love have to, they have to be together. In fact, the two words are exactly the same, except for a L and an O, a phallic symbol and an ovum.
I've never thought of that. Oh my God,
It's
that's amazing.
Isn't that true? Okay, so
Genius.
life and love are they are a unit. They go together. The next one is laughter. Laughter without love is mean. It's cruel. It hurts. People are damaged. Families are torn apart by mean things that are said or done or whatever. But laughter with love is joy and happiness. It's what makes you sing, you know. Labor without love is drudgery. Oh man, too many diapers. I have to go to work. This is too hard. It's too dark. I'm too scared. All of those things are drudgery. You drag yourself through it. But if you can begin to look at it not as drudgery, but as the very thing that lets you live in bliss. It's the joy of a painter that's painting. It's the singer that's singing. It's why you're doing what you're doing. It's why I'm doing it's very juice within us, and is bliss. And the fifth one is listening. Listening without love is empty sound. I have so many patients who have gone to see another doctor and come back and said to me, I told him everything and he didn't listen at all. You know, it's such a injured soul that comes back. But listening with love is understanding. So for me, these 5 L's really give me a platform on which I can stand and live my life as I choose to live it, with this as my foundation.
That's so powerful. My God, I love that so much. And you share a story in your book that I literally laughed out loud, Gladys. And I've already told my husband this story. I'm telling everybody that I see this story about how that moment of you're at the grocery store, and I believe you're like 93 years old. And please share that story. It is so beautiful because the end result of how you got to the laughter is just amazing. And it really highlights the importance of exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. I had just come back from my 99th birthday party. Okay. So I'm feeling pretty good. And I go to the grocery store to pick up some groceries, and they're in the basket, and I'm moving them from the basket to my car. And an elder man comes walking by, and he says to me, "Oh, may I help you?" And I said, No, I can do it myself. And he says, "Well, I'm 86. And I said, "Well, I'm 99. And I march off, and I get into my car with the groceries, and I sit down. And I said to myself, "You nasty old woman. He was just being nice. Why don't you go back and apologize?" And, so I'm struggling with myself. And suddenly I realized that is so funny. 2 kindergarten kids in the sign box trying to outdo the other one by saying, I'm older than you are. And I started laughing, and I sat there and I just laughed. It's a huge comedy thing, you know.
Oh, I love that story. So, and it made me laugh out loud. And so, as we were going through, as you were going through the 5 L's, and you talk about laughter, I'd never thought about laughter without love as being cruel. That is so strong. But the importance of laughter. And so, anyone listening, if they're feeling down, if they're feeling hurt, if they don't know how to switch things around, that little beautiful story of how, and you even said it in the book, I think it was like, I was just picturing like, oh, from the outside, here there's these two really old people arguing about who's actually stronger to lift the bags to put in the car. And then that thought then made you laugh out loud, which then dissipated the annoyance or the frustration that maybe you got hit with initially. And so many of us, I think, stay in that moment of being offended or being upset or being, defensive, and being able to say, hang on a minute, this doesn't suit me. How can I flip it? Let me see the humor in this. And then the fact that you're able to see the humor, and then, the story ends with you laughing in your car by yourself hysterically.
Yeah. Well, my mother taught me that when I was this dyslexic kid and all, but so I was when I got into third grade, the teacher saw something in me that the other one hadn't. So she appointed me class governor because I could do some things that the other kids didn't want to do or something like that. Anyway, we had a play that our class was to put on for the whole student body. And since I was bigger than the other kids because I'd been around 1 year longer, the frog jumped over the pond. So I was the frog. And my mother made me a little green frog suit and all of that. And I come walking out onto the stage with great confidence because I could jump over that pond really well. And so I come walking out, but I see my two older brothers in the front row of the audience. And it just threw me off my step enough that instead of jumping over the pond, I landed in it. And I'm standing in the pond, and my suit is fading, and I'm crying, and I can't move, and I'm just totally humiliated, and life is terrible, and all of that. And the audience is cracking up. They're laughing and just doubling up. The more they laughed, the louder it got. Finally, the teacher comes and leads me off the stage. And that was my deep humiliation, the end of everything. So we get home and we're at the dinner table, and my brothers are telling my mother how humorous this was, how funny it was, and how they were just laughing and laughing. I'm giving them the dead eye, and they're not paying any attention to me, but they're just really going on. And finally, my mother says, all right, boys, now you've had your fun, but what can we do as a family to help Gladys so that this never happens? If it ever happens again, she can turn into something that the people will laugh with her and not at her. And throughout my life, that has been something that I was able to do from that point on. Because, with this whole aspect of dyslexia, there's also a certain amount of imbalance. I can't tell you how many times I've tripped when I'm going up to the podium and all that. But I've always been able to say something like, oh, I'm such a drama queen. And I immediately have the audience in my hand, and I can start it is that I'm talking about. So that my mother's wisdom and ability to take throughout her life, she could take anything that happened almost, and with just a little twist, make something humorous out of it. A week before she died, we were sitting out on our porch, and my dad and I were looking at the garden, and she says, "Look at that." This is my dad. "Look at that petunia bush. It's got at least 400 blossoms on it." And my dad says, "Oh, Beth, it doesn't have more than 40. She says, "What's another zero?" You know, I mean, that kind of humor that imbued my very essence. And so I was able to carry that on as life has gone on. It's how we juice each other up, you know. And my mother, when she fell and broke her hip, broke her knee and her ribs, and my dad and I were moving her onto the X-ray table, and she looks up and sees the pain in our faces, and she says, "The old gray bear, she ain't what she used to be," you know. And the next day she died. But it was having a role model like that. It has been grace beyond imagining, you know.
That's such a beautiful story, yeah. And, in your book, you call it, humiliation through humor. And I actually didn't realize that that's exactly what I did. And you even said as you walked up to the podium and you trip, the first time I ever did public speaking, I was so scared. And part of what I was scared about is being humiliated. And so
Yeah.
what I realized is, how do I get past it? Because getting on stage becomes a part of me that I get to impact people. Impacting people is my North Star. It is my mission. It is my purpose. It is my juice, as you call it in your book. And so I realized I need to live in my juice. I need to keep squeezing the juice. But if I'm scared to go on stage because of humiliation, it is now preventing me from squeezing the juice. So I realized what I was afraid of was being humiliated. Okay, how do I counteract that? The idea was I just laughed at myself. And so that was the thing that I just had in my head. Lisa, if you mess up, just laugh. Because then at least all the audience will laugh with you, not at you. And it never dawned on me until you just said that. And I was like, oh my God, that is exactly the aha moment that I had. I couldn't articulate it before. And I actually did mess up the very first time. And I ended up saying that my father gave birth to my grandmother instead of obviously the other way around. And it's my first public speaking gig. And I just laughed, and I was like, well, that would be weird. And everybody laughed and I laughed, and then I just was able to move on. And that story now hits me very beautifully, and I can say it with humor, not with humiliation.
Yeah. And what a difference.
Yeah, such a difference. Dr. Gladys, I literally could talk to you for so long. We've just touched on a couple of your secrets of how to bring happiness and love and light to somebody's life. Where can people find you and your just incredible book that you've written?
Gladys McGarey.com and the Foundation for Living Medicine. Either one. Love you.
Keep watching to learn the 3 keys to identifying the true love of your life. You are an incredible freaking entrepreneur with your plant-based cheeses, which are just insane, called Shrimu. And you also are married to an incredible human who I know, Rich Roll. Now, when I look at you and I've heard about, again, entrepreneur, amazing partner, you guys just make each other shine. And as I started to dig into you, I had no idea actually that Rich was your 3rd marriage. And you spoke about how much of your past marriages impacted your life and how you showed up. And so that's where I'd love to start, is what are the key things that you found that being with Rich really allowed you to blossom as an entrepreneur and as an independent badass woman that you are?
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, I mean, it's important that I highlight that I don't regard any of my marriages as failures. Okay? So I think that relationships are about contracts that you have with certain individuals. And some of these contracts are forever, we could say forever, or at least in this lifetime, but some of them are just for periods of time. They could be to bring some children into the world, they could be for some other type of experience, any kind of experience, to learn, to explore, to really create evolution together in some form. So for me, in my own experience, I've had 3 marriages, but I've been deeply in love 6 times. So for me, my timeline with love was not a straight one, let's say, or a certain one. So in my case, my first marriage was what I like to call a very essential step in my mastery. But this marriage was an abusive marriage, and what I would describe as a hell realm that I grappled with for about a 7-year period. So very, very intense. Then I...
Before you move on, I really want to go deep into this, if you
Okay.
don't mind,
No,
because
I
I
don't
think
mind.
each stage of everything that you're talking
Yeah.
about really has become the building blocks that make you who is able to sit here today as, like I said, an amazing, incredible entrepreneur and having a beautiful relationship. So everyone at home right now is freaking out on how on earth can you sit here and say it was an abusive relationship, it was for 7 years, and yet it was a successful relationship.
Yeah, hard to say, and definitely hard when I was in it. So I was in my 20s when this man came into my life. So I was not fully embodied in who I am, didn't fully know who I was. And the big key that was the catalyst that put me into this experience is that I was a shadow musician, meaning that I was a singer since I was 6 years old, but I made decisions to not sing. I did other things. And he was in the music business and was representing very famous bands, and it was a very sort of heady, seductive world. I was backstage passes to Elton John and Tina Turner and Tears for Fears and David Bowie and Rolling Stones and Guns N' Roses and just everyone, right? So as a 20-something, it was a very, it seduced me, and even though this was an individual that I was not initially attracted to, this individual pursued me relentlessly. And even though after I discovered his violence and his trauma, I left him many times, but he would not leave me alone. So he pursued me in the city. He would sit outside my work. He would call my family. If I did move out, he would be at my sister's apartment. Like it was a full-on thing. Like it was not like I didn't want to get out of it, or I hadn't tried to get out of it. And I also didn't realize that the abuse was there until I was already living with him. So I would see it in little doses, like in the form of him exploding or losing his temper or hanging up the phone. And I had the illusion that I had things under control. So I felt like I was really in the more aware position. I could see that he was struggling, that he had a lot of immaturity. And also as a spiritually focused individual, I was subscribing to this idea that I should forgive him, that I should believe him when he was sorry, which he always was. It wasn't like it was happening all the time. I would have periods and months of great fun and world expansion and all these good things, and then the abuse cycle would come around. But it's like that; it's a cycle. So it was a very dangerous and very intense time. I wasn't with him for the entire 7 years. I actually was with him, broke up with him, had another boyfriend for a year and a half, and went back and married him.
Wow. Okay. So in that moment, then, if you've identified everything, because this is so common, this is the thing. If we can really freaking piece this apart, girl, we're literally about to change people's lives, because sometimes we want to hear certain things, and so even if somebody becomes maybe like the stalkerish, eventually there is that possibility that if we're insecure enough that they say the right thing that makes us feel full, that makes us want to go back. I'm so curious, what was that thing that you had told yourself in that moment of why you then went back, married him? Because I always think about, like, if we could tell our younger selves something now.
Yeah, what to do.
Yeah, what to do. Now, here's the beautiful thing. I think you sitting here today is the person who needed to go through all of that. I don't want to say needed, that's the wrong word, but you are who you are today because of it.
Absolutely.
But I never want people to have to go through it.
Right.
So what is that thing that you actually can go back and like, oh, those were the things that I can identify?
The biggest error that I feel that I made, and And you know, I don't regret anything in my life. So I didn't make an error. It was part of my mastery, which is what I told you. It was a very difficult initiation into my mastery. But the thing that I learned is that I learned that the biggest error is to put another person before you. And in my Water Tiger spiritual community, where I mentor women and people internationally, the whole platform is a living sphere of techniques that allow you to embody the truth of who you are so that you can love yourself and nurture yourself and be there for yourself as a first relationship, not a second relationship, not after the kids, before, number one. So I learned that that was the error because I put him before me because I could see his pain and I could see his goodness and I could see that he was suffering and I could see that he didn't have the awareness that I had. And then the other part is being young and 20 and, you know, the heady part of the backstage tickets and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So it was a very severe teaching. And when I finally did get away, I would have these recurring dreams that he would not leave me alone. Like in the dream, I would be telling him, I don't love you, I don't love you. And he would be grabbing onto my leg, like literally not letting me go. And for the beginning times after I left him, I had a very hard time taking responsibility for the fact that I had allowed someone to treat me that way. Because I was, you know, I was hurt. I had a lot of hurt over that. And I was never violent with him. Like it was never something that I did. It was all just, you know, this abuse cycle. But it wasn't until I took responsibility as a creator being that this was part of my path. It was part of my becoming. You know, you were just saying this is who you are. But I mean, this is part of me becoming. And so that's why I call it a vital step in my mastery that I am so grateful that I got out of, that had one step been to the left or the right, my life could have been over or it would have been drastically different. And the reason that I married him was literally to run the race car into the wall so that it would explode, because it kept yo-yoing back. You know, like I couldn't quite get out. I couldn't get away from him. So it's quite a thing. You know, you're the first person that's ever asked me the depth of this experience. I've spoken about it before, but never really at this level.
Yeah, it's so important because there's something that you just said. I didn't want to interrupt, but I was like, oh God, that's the thing. Where you said one step to the right, one step to the left, like it could have been over. Yeah. And that haunts me, girl. That freaking haunts me. And that's why I do this show. That's why I need to go deep on things, because someone listening right now, that one little step to the right changes their life. But if they can hear the nuance in your stories and the beauty in it, then it gives them hope and it allows them to know then to assess what direction to go into before it's like, I don't want to say too late because I don't want to be like that extreme, but it's going to be harder to unwind. It's going to be harder to go backwards. And so when I think through everything that you just said, how the hell then did you not become a victim?
Well, I think it's by understanding that we are all universal creators and that we, at some level, plan the life. So we come in and we have these agreements, like I'm going to create a life that is a field that has certain aspects in it. And as I go through that, that is going to catalyze these constrictions, I'll call them, and expansions, and different sort of flavors, we could say, that create a certain quality of life experience that will give me the fuel or the alchemy or the friction to create evolution, to have really excelled, really expanded, and to have learned that lesson. So it clearly was, in my case, that step in my mastery, because I didn't waste the lesson. Now, it took me way longer than, you know, I would recommend. It was a 7-year cycle in total. But the other thing that I really want to highlight, and I think this is the key is that it is not spiritual to put another being before you. It is not. And what we get called is, you know, the word narcissism gets thrown around quite a lot in our society. I'm talking about understanding that you are a divine life form, that has been brought into this realm. The sun is shining on everything in creation without cessation, without edit. And every being is no more loved or less loved in the eyes of creation. It's not a contest. And in order to be spiritual, this program of martyrdom, which is very present in the feminine embodiment in this planet, is not it. That's not it. That is not really honoring the divine force within you.
Can you explain what you mean by that exactly? Like, how does that translate into actions that how we show up to
What
be?
it means is really going into meditation, going into a spiritual practice to commune with yourself in the silence, to journal, to it's not the same as running, it's not the same as these type of things, but those can be good beginning sort of steps. But to enter into a yoga practice, a breathwork practice, meditation. In Water Tiger, we do a lot of open eye meditation in the mirror, which is one of the most transformative techniques. It's very confronting, but to actually look at yourself in the mirror, preferably naked, but also, gazing at the third eye and keeping that focus, even though your eyes will want to close, grabbing that focus again, and many things will come up.
Oh God, okay, that's amazing. But did you do that before you went into your next marriage, or that was something recent? Because I'd love to actually take through your evolution, because your story is so damn powerful. Again, I'm just going to keep coming back to, there are these moments in life that steer us in one direction or another. And depending on what direction we go to, it can actually dictate where we end up in life, and whether we've achieved our dreams, whether we are the person that we can say we're proud of. And so when you were out of that relationship, had you understood that it has to be about self first? Or did you enter a new relationship? Because I think I heard you say the next one was your fairy tale relationship.
So fairy
and you
tale,
said this in
yes.
front of Rich, your husband
really
now, so I actually would love to talk about this.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say that I was born with the spiritual gene. I'm one of those beings.
Yeah.
So I had the same feeling that I have today when I was a baby. I don't feel different. However, I hadn't had the life experience. So I went through this whole drug exploration in my teens, but really as a result, because I was living in a family that was not spiritually focused, and I was very spiritually focused, and I couldn't get out of that life. And so this is the beauty about these moments of constriction, because when everything's going great, it's not usually when we make big changes or when we really dive in. So, I call them, and have called them with Rich, and everything that we've done is they're a sacred moment, is what they are. Like, I didn't go through an abusive marriage. It was a sacred moment, because it's the kind that brings you to your knees, and there's nowhere else to go. So if anybody's listening to this interview and watching, and they're in that moment, I invite a shift of perspective, because again, life is made up of perspectives. It doesn't matter what happens to you. It matters your perspective about what happens to you. So I ended up meeting my second husband, who's the father of my two beautiful sons, my oldest children, Tyler and Trapper. And I met him on Valentine's Day in a job interview. And this job interview was catalyzed by the sister of the current husband, who imposed upon me to meet with this gentleman. And I didn't want to go, and I was annoyed. And I went, and when we looked at each other, it was a past life recognition. By the time breakfast was over, we were already in love. And, he was scrambling and asking questions, and I was still married to this other person. And I wasn't telling him because I was trying to get the job. He was a manager of a big real estate company. So I didn't lead on, like I didn't let him know, but the events ensued, and within probably a month to 6 weeks, I was leaving the abuser finally. And he was like, I got to see you, like, where are you? So that was a very fast connect. And we were married, just within like 9 months. Like, my divorce was final. We were married the next month, and I was with him for 10 years. Wow. Of one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. But he literally just loved me into my creative being. Those 10 years were a process of me never having to say I'm sorry. He had to teach me not to say I was sorry. And all he did was adore me and love me and support me. It was overwhelming and amazing and a huge gift of my life. Huge gift of my life.
And how much of that, where someone supports you and accepts you for who you are, makes a difference for you to feel the freedom to keep exploring?
Oh, huge. I mean, huge, huge. And, you know, I had been experiencing the very severe opposite of that, you know, so I had to get comfortable with it, to tell you the truth. Sometimes it was too much. It was too much presence, you know, too much, like a little too nice, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, how do you process those moments? Because it's like sometimes you can, when someone's being very genuine, you can be so skeptical of it based on your past experiences. And now it's like you say that you want someone who loves you, respects you, but here you are actually dismissing it when it happens.
Sure, it was a comfort level, you know, something that I wasn't used to.
How did you navigate that? And did you become more comfortable over time? Like
Yeah,
how do you
very
become not
much.
Protective of letting yourself go in another relationship?
Well, because I just had this other energy that was so safe and so nourishing and so charming and kind and just fun, you know, just a completely different sort of reflection. But one of the things that I'd like to share, and this is one of my great secrets for having successful relationship, and I think I heard you speaking about it recently, is really communicating. And communicating when something feels off, the way to diffuse it is to call it out, whatever that is, whether it's an attraction, whether it's an uncomfortable feeling, whether it's jealousy, whether it's anything, really anything, and the freedom to be able to bring words or bring a definition to what that energy is. It brings it out and allows you as a couple to talk through it, to communicate through it so that it can go away. If you don't talk about it and you shove it down and you're trying to act like everything's fine or be strong or, you know, or shove it down, it can grow. It can still exist. It's almost like you want to call out whatever that dark thing is in the corner of the room so that you can bring it out in the light and you can really look at it and really see what it is.
Oh God, I love that so much. Yes, I'm so with you there. But it's in the fear of shining a light on something that makes people not shine the light in the first place. And what I found beautiful is one of your interviews that you do with Rich, and he asks you, like, the very first question. Literally, you start the interview and he says, "So honey, how are you feeling about the state of our marriage?"
I know.
And I was like, that immediately is like, they have a beautiful marriage. Now look, I'm not behind the scenes, so I don't actually know. But when you go to communication, that's the thing, where you can be so open and vulnerable to ask your partner, how do you feel? Because you're leaving space for them to say, I'm not happy, this is wrong. And yet there's so much beauty in making sure that you give your partner the space to be honest and say things like that. So how did you and Rich get to the point where you can have that type of communication 20 years down the line, be so secure? And then I want to talk about how you guys have evolved together, because I think that that's huge.
Well, again, you know, you look at the trajectory of my romantic experiences. So I had this abusive experience, I had this fairy tale experience, and then I have my beautiful marriage now with Rich, which is really one of union. You know, it's a partnership of opposites, but it's on a very sort of equal ground, you know, and it is held in a field of unconditional love and trust that surpasses anything that I've experienced with anyone else. So the level of intimacy that we can go to is deeper than anything else that I've ever experienced. And that is probably largely due to his 12-step program. I want to just give a shout out to the 12-step program and to men in recovery or people in recovery, because it gives a language to communicate. It gives a language of accountability, a language of being able to look at yourself. And so from the two of us, we have me, who I'm spiritually oriented, so I'm looking at it from that devotional aspect and also always taking accountability and looking within. So if you have an issue, the answer is inside of you, of your own self. That's where the treasure is. So between these two modalities, we've been able to, really, really be safe with each other and be able to say, I really don't like what you did, or I don't like what you're doing, or I don't like the behavior. But the love is always there. It's like, I love you, but I might not like the behavior. So it's different. It's not the same thing. We're not our actions, we're not our emotions, we're not our thoughts and our words necessarily.
Do you feel super self-conscious when you go to the gym, trying to work out in front of all of these strangers, worrying if they're eyeing you? Guys, I get it. When I first started working out, I had no freaking idea what I was doing. If only today's sponsor, Future, existed back then when I was just getting started. I mean, with Future, you literally have your own personal badass trainer right in your pocket, cheering you on and freaking kicking you in the butt when you need it. Future pairs you with a real-life personal trainer that will work with you to build a fitness plan that fits your freaking needs and helps you achieve your goals, not other people's. So whether your goal is to feel confident in a sexy swimsuit or have more energy to be a freaking badass, then there's an expert Future trainer who knows exactly how to help you get there. And for a limited time, I have a special offer. If you go to use my link, you will get 50% off your first month with a Future trainer. So go to tryfuture.co/Lisa to get started, or click the link below in my description, or scan the QR code right here. Guys, give it a try and flex your confidence.
So if we can keep that soul connection and allow it to be a little messy, but always respectful. So never any, we're very good about never saying unkind things that you can't take back. There's a certain decorum in that process. No one storms out, no one disappears for days at a time. It's like there is respect and an agreement within that. So we do have some agreements, but we come from two different universes, as you are well aware.
And that's what I find so amazing is when people come from, me and Tom as well, like we are completely night and day. And when we first met, everyone was like, well, how are you guys going to make it work? Like you're really, you're Greek Orthodox. He doesn't have any religion. You come from different cultures, different backgrounds, different lifestyles. Like there's so much that's different. But when I think back, there was a foundation of values that we shared. And so even though we showed up as two very different humans and acted in different ways, our core values were exactly the same.
I think that's true. I think that's a very key part that Rich and I share, like the way we parent our children, the way that we will solve a conflict. It's very much the same. So maybe the things that really, really matter are the things that we're more in alignment with than, day to day, like this is how I get my joy, or this is what I'm interested in life, or
like we'll always agree to respect each other.
Yes.
Okay, now what does that actually look like? What does that mean? Like kind of digging deeper, because I don't know about you, because I come from a very traditional Greek Orthodox family. I don't know if you've ever been in a household of Greeks. We're very loud and we're very boisterous. We ask a question, we turn our heads, we don't listen to answers, we speak over each other, and that's just the culture. Tom comes into the dynamic, and we leave, and I'm like, my family is the most giving, loving family I've ever met. And we leave, and Tom's like, they were so rude. And I was like, what? And he was like, babe, they were talking over me. Your dad asked me a question, he doesn't even listen. And I was like, oh, we have a different perception of what respect looks like. And so it's not that we are okay with disrespecting people, it's just that our levels just don't match. And so instead of saying, well, we're different, let's just actually get aligned of what respect looks like so we can speak the same language.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, it's powerful. It's very, very powerful. And we're not the same. None of us are the same. And so, the opposites can create a lot of alchemy and a lot of transformation. And I mean, you guys are living proof of that. So it's like, yeah, there's something in that recipe that creates the friction, that polishes the diamond. Because, maybe it wouldn't be as dynamic if it was just two of the same,
Right, yeah.
I don't know.
Well, so let's actually talk about that friction, because sometimes, like you said, the friction can be great. It's exactly what you need to get aligned, be great couple, really work together. But sometimes that friction where you think, oh my God, I just need to work through the friction, but actually it just becomes worse. And now that friction becomes the break or the crack in your relationship. And now there's, you're trying to repair it, but actually it probably would have been better to let go sooner. How do you... I've heard you speak with Rich about one of the scenarios where I believe he had a relapse, and that was one of the moments in your relationship where it almost broke you guys. In that moment with the friction, how did you know, or what were the signs? Maybe you didn't know, but maybe you can share with us some thoughts about how you decided to keep going and try and not fix that's not the right word, become in harmony again, versus say, okay, this friction now doesn't serve our marriage, maybe it's time to break up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big one. In my case, in this one instance, the universe gave me the set the table, let's just say that. So I came back from Rich DNFing and using, and it was finally my time to record my record, because I recorded 2 albums with my sons were in my band. And so it was finally my time, and I had waited all this time. We didn't have enough money, and I'd been supporting Rich in his training, and it was my time. So I had the recording engineer coming to my house, and we had set up, and we had started recording my record, and I was just like, I can't deal with this right now. Like, I'm not dealing with this right now. So there was a little timeout, and then right after that, during the recording, my son's beloved father died tragically. And then it was just irrelevant. Like, the DNF was completely irrelevant at that point. And we just moved on. But I would say, barring that kind of drastic universal moment, I would say, you just got to let shit go. I mean, basically, you can decide to hold a grudge and live in the past and grind and grind and grind and grind, and it's only going to create suffering. And so I always ask myself, am I going to be married to this man? Yes. Do I have a million other things that we've experienced that have been, loving and expansive and creative and life affirming? Yes. And it's a choice. Do I want to live in that hell and hold on to that? Or do I want to be free and just let it go? So it's like being born anew, like in the moment, in a new moment, in a new moment. And, what you put your attention on is what you create. So, where you put your focus is what you're going to create more energy on. And you found this in a relationship. Like, if you guys get stuck on one thing and you just keep going in and you're like poking the bleeding wound and picking the scab off, like that's what you were talking about. But if you just shift the focus, it can be a whole new reality, like in a matter of an hour almost. So I think it just comes with maturity, and just, sometimes you're going to be disappointed. That's how it goes. And in every decision you make, there will be positive things about it and negative things about it. Nothing is all good or all bad. Life is gray. It's not black or white. So again, coming back to what I was suggesting, it's how you apply perspective. And so again, in my spiritual mentorship, it's all about taking the empowerment of applying the perspective that you choose. So when I went through a 9-year financial collapse with Rich during our marriage, which catalyzed everything that we've become, people would say to me, you're a deadbeat. You can't pay your bills. I didn't have a bank account for 4 years. I had both cars repossessed. I couldn't get my kids to school. Things were intense. A lot of people wanted to apply their fear onto me. This was a big one, because I was going through this sort of alchemization of the money system. So on a planetary level, I knew that I was clearing some of the violence in our systems against people, artists. Like, how many beautiful musicians or artists or teachers or philosophers, are selling insurance because they're trying to pay their bills because, we're in this paradigm, right? Yeah. So I knew by going through this that I was starting to melt some edges of that for the collective, right? And so Rich, which made no sense, I was telling him to train first, to see to me and the kids second, and if a law job fell in his lap, he could service it, but without any emotion, because that was not in alignment for him. And why did I do this? I knew this because I could feel the energy. It was a shift in the energy. He could have sent out thousands of resumes and he wouldn't have gotten a job. We were in this alchemy experience, and this was part of our becoming so that we could be the catalysts and the examples, the living examples for others to choose a life of living according to their heart, their dreams. And so, again, it's perspective. People would become very afraid and they would be freaking out, like, because if this is happening to you, then it could happen to me. So I want you to get away from me. Or I would have somebody say, if I was you, I wouldn't choose bankruptcy. I just wouldn't choose it. And I looked at this individual and I said, really? I said, well, it might just choose you someday.
That's a great answer.
Well, it was not a light thing. And also in our story, it wasn't like I woke up one day and I was like, we're going to choose our hearts and lose all our money and, starve for 9 years. Like, it doesn't work that way. It's a feeling. You can feel it. And I call it being dismantled. It's like the energy no longer matches the vibration that you hold. And so there was nothing to attach to us. And so there were years of self-discovery, of Rich becoming a vegan, plant-based Ultraman, of running in the mountains, of me meditating and doing so many ceremonies and rituals and all kinds of things that I've done that I haven't written about, and creating music with my children over a 7-year period that was worth me taking a body for, just to make music with my boys for 7 years. Are you kidding me? Like, no one even had to hear a note. It was already fulfilled on the deepest level. So people would say to me, they would project that fear of, you're a loser, you're a deadbeat, you can't pay your bills, and I would say, no, I'm in my sacred moment. And at the time they thought she's an insane person. But now people call me all the time or come up to me and they're emotional about it because they know what we did to be standing in this place where we are. And once you live it and you digest it, it's your experience. No one can take it from you. Someone can't say online, oh, screw them, they're fraud. Like, it just doesn't matter. Yeah. Because it's in the being. And truth and beingness, they don't defend, they simply are. And it's part of who I am. It's part of my makeup.
Ooh, okay, there's so much there that I didn't want to interrupt you, but girl, we've got to go deep. Okay, there was one thing that you said, first of all, that I was like, that just takes such security in oneself to turn to your partner and say, put me second. So I'd love to actually talk about that, because many people, if they're not put first in their relationship, they feel less than, and then they feel insecure in that relationship. So actually, I'd love to pull apart that piece where you said to him, like, was it his running first? Was that?
Training.
His training first, and then you and the kids. Break that down for me, because it is so beautiful. Because that's also the gift that I think we want, is that let me be me first.
Yeah, so I mean, being somebody that believes or feels deeply that we come into this life to become who we are. And there's only one of you in the entire omniverse, so there's not another Lisa coming. So if I wanted that for myself, I had to want that for Rich. I had to want it for him. It would be hypocritical and misaligned if I only wanted it for me. And so while it seemed on the surface, what I should have been telling him is go get another law job, I just knew that the way to evolution and expansion is through the heart. The heart doesn't fail you. It will not fail you, ever. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. So I always say, like, I didn't know it was going to take that long. It was tough. It was really tough. And let me be clear, I want to be seen as much as Rich. I'm not behind Rich. And it's been a little challenging in my life because I felt I was going to be fully realized when I was 30. I just turned 60. And I haven't even begun. I'm just beginning. And so a lot of the narrative in the culture about, Rich being, rich, which is beautiful and it's amazing, that's a challenge in our marriage now because I was never behind Rich. I was the entrepreneur. I was pushing him the whole time. And of his own admission, he said to me the other day, he said, "You were always destined for a great life." And he said, "And you knew I was destined for a great life, but I didn't know it." So, and Rich is he's masterful at what he does. I mean, what a beautiful expression of life and everything that he's created. And his platform has given so many people like so much love and nourishment and celebration, and being his partner, it's like, I don't go, he's at a Google event right now and I'm not going because I'm not available to be arm candy. I don't do that. So
okay, this is so amazing. God, let's go deep on this because everything you're saying is things that I deal with. I know so many other people deal with and battle, especially now as we women are now finding it beautiful to be able to step into our own, to build our own businesses, to be independent, to have our own voice, to have our own platforms. And so the nuance of stepping into your own, but also supporting someone that is just as strong, just as vocal, has just as strong of a voice, but not making sure that you don't disappear into the background, making sure that you don't stay in the shadows. And it reminded me of one moment. It was probably a couple of years ago now, before I was actually in front of the camera. One day, Tom and I were talking and he broke down in tears. And he said, "Babe, no one will truly understand that I'm the man I am today because of you." And everyone gives me the accolades because he's in front of the camera and because people know his name. And he's like, I wouldn't exist or be the person I am if it wasn't for you. And you don't get any of that recognition, if you will. And so there was something you said earlier that I really want to make sure that we pinpoint as we start to talk about this, is you said it was your turn. So you were stepping into the studio. How many of us women wait for it to be our turn? How we're like, okay, let me just have the kids. Let me just make sure the husband is good. Let me make sure that I've supported him first and then it will be my turn.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a gigantic, whole, universal, like, it's a planetary condition that you're speaking to, and it's because we live in a patriarchal realm, you would say. So it's the masculine that has been celebrated, that is put in the forefront, and it starts thousands of years ago and even beyond that, when the feminine frequency was ripped out of the spiritual history of this planet, all right? So it's not just Me Too, it's way before then. It's where no priests were women anymore, where we were burned at the stake for healing with plants. We've been eradicated out of the entire, our entire divine place, our divine right place in life. So this doesn't have to do with our husbands or our partners. This is a program that is very, very deep. So it's important that we start to recognize that this is what this moment in time is about. This is a new procession, planetary procession, and a new moment, a new eon, a new age. And so this is about the feminine coming into her rightful position, not overpowering the masculine, but in equal balance, right? So masculine and feminine exist within each of us. And let's be clear that the feminine energy wants to be seen. So relationship tip, if you're in relationship with a woman or a feminine embodied person, they want to be seen. Make sure you are seeing them. See them, see them, see them. That is what the feminine wants. So then you get to, you were saying, how do you not be in the background? How do we do it? Because we're nurturing, and not only are we nurturing our children, we're nurturing our partners as well. So there is a time element. I mean, I wasn't putting myself in the background because I was doing all of my spiritual practices and my rituals and my ceremonies, and I was holding the vision and I was leading the way. I was guiding him through this awakening. And I was also working on my music. So not only was I writing music and lyrics and music, but that I then was collaborating with my sons who were becoming musicians. So there is give and take. I mean, there is times where you give to your partner and you serve, but I guess where we're not is in the martyrdom. There is no place for martyrdom, for like to not fulfill yourself because someone else, you know, is in the front position or whatever. So it's a challenge. And I think it's probably the biggest challenge in Rich and my relationship right now, because we're not, you know, we're not collaborating on as many things, and we're both makers. We both are creating things. And so, you know, that's a little bit of a challenge. Like, how do we intersect?
Yeah, that is what is so incredible. I mean, one of a million things of what's so incredible about your journey and your story is having gone through everything you've just laid out for us, and then really owning that you are an equal and that this is what I'm doing, this is what I love, now's my time, I'm going to do it, you know, I'm still going to serve my husband, and having like this beautiful, I don't even say balance, I like the word harmony, I prefer harmony, right? Like You've got a better harmony with how you show up every day. And the thing that I get asked a lot from my audience is the evolution piece, is that, hey, for the first couple of years I was supportive, you know, that's my story. For 8 years I was supporting my husband, I was a stay-at-home wife, I was cooking for him, I was cleaning for him, but I wasn't in my own. I wasn't saying what I wanted, and that was on me, not on him. But I was profoundly unhappy. I didn't enjoy providing for him food, and that wasn't my love language, or it wasn't his. It was his, but it wasn't mine. So I wasn't finding any satisfaction, and instead I was just becoming more and more unhappy and miserable. And it was hard for me to get out of that, to speak up and say, hey, I'm not living the life I actually want. And so in what you're saying, there's this evolution piece of I used to be this, or I used to show up like this, and now I'm transitioning. And when you're in a relationship with somebody else that prides themselves also on evolving, like Rich and like my husband Tom, it becomes difficult to navigate, to your point of this is who I want to be, this is what I want to become, this is how I want to evolve. And so you focus on that, and at the same time your partner's doing that, making sure you're always aligned and not going off on different paths is very difficult. And this is where, whenever I backtrack and I go, where was the point where people started to split apart? Because when you hear about marriage, when you hear about relationships, they were once connected, you hope, right? They were once totally on the same line. And then people say, I blinked and now they've changed, or I've blinked and now we're not connecting. And the truth is, you never freaking just blink, ever. So what happens in that blinking moment that we're not paying attention to, that then takes our drive and our want to be an independent woman, a badass, an entrepreneur, these are the words that I like to use, where you've created this Shrimu, which is amazing, which we're definitely going to go into, but you've poured your heart and soul into this product, and it's succeeding, and it's freaking blowing up, and now people are knowing who you are more and more. And Rich is on his path. So I know you said this is actually a difficult moment. What are you guys doing, if you don't mind sharing some of those things? Because I never want someone to go, I have to choose between my independence, my career, my life, and my relationship. I don't think that has to be a choice of one or the other if you're in the right relationship.
Right. Well, I would say it's important to acknowledge that we are in a planetary procession, a moment of transformation, and everyone, no matter where you are, you're going through change and evolution. So no one is going to stay in a status quo. Everything is going to evolve. So there's a couple things that I'm focused on and I've been communicating with Rich about. And one of the big questions is, how do you want to evolve? Not from a focus of how do we guard the relationship? Okay, so I'm being more courageous than that.
Ooh, go on.
So again, so similarly, as I supported him through that moment of transformation, and when Rich and I were married, probably similarly to you guys, we vowed to support each other to realize our wildest dreams. That was our vow. So, I had studied with an Indian master, one of my many boyfriend gurus, who proposed to me that human love is like a business arrangement. Human love says that if you do X, Y, and Z, then I will love you. And if you cease to do X, Y, and Z, I will remove my love from you. And he was comparing that to divine love. And he was saying divine love is like the sun. It's simply shining without cessation, without edit, without terms, without rules, without a deal, right? And that was one of the big catalysts in Rich and my relationship when he was eating a lot of meat and a lot of junk food and he was struggling. It was this shift that allowed him to become who he is, was releasing this. So our big questions to ourselves right now are, what are you hiding?
Oh, that's such a hard. Explain that question actually first.
Well, we're all hiding something, right? I mean, because we have a society and we have this patriarchal system and we have systems and schools and jobs and whatever you thought you were supposed to be or whatever you thought the world was going to be, or aspects of yourself that you haven't sat with, or levels of yourself that you haven't embodied. I always say, like, if you're judging another person, if you see somebody online and they're annoying you and you have all this stuff to say about them, it's because you haven't loved yourself enough. Because it's not a contest. So if you have to tear another person down, or it's really annoying you, what you're really annoyed at is that you haven't given yourself that level of presence and really taken the time to know who you are, what you love. So as we evolve and as we go through different layers of awareness, what are you hiding? Like, what is it inside of yourself that you have not even allowed yourself to see? The second question is, how do you want to evolve? How do you want to evolve? I mean, we've been now in these relationships, these marriages for going on 20 years, over 20 years. And we're going to be here maybe for a while. No one ever knows. But, you guys are like fit and healthy and you have all this stuff going on. So it's like, how do we want to evolve? You've already digested this level of relationship. And so where is that going? Because probably, like, Rich and I have one sort of agreement. We promised each other we would never go to Home Depot with each other on the weekends.
I expected something super profound and like mind-blowing right now. And it's like, don't go to Home Depot.
That is off limits for us. That is never happening. So, it's this wonderful moment, this precipice, this vista that we're standing on of creating ourselves anew. And in order to do that, we have to be courageous. We have to love each other so much that we have to want the ultimate for ourselves and the ultimate for our partner. And there are certain things that I will never do with Rich. And there are certain things that he will never do with me. And I'm not talking about, don't start thinking like I'm saying open relationship, because it's not what I'm saying. And as a matter of fact, I want to talk about sacred sexuality within this context, because we're also at a platform in our sexual relations that we are being called to rewrite a sacred union that is an experience of activating the divinity that is within us, meaning creativity, spirituality, and sexuality is a trinity. It's the same force. So what if we knew that our sexual energy was our most sacred force? How would you enter into that, and how would that exchange be different? So I don't think it's existing yet. Some of us are starting to rewrite that experience.
Oh my God, thinking about sexuality, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was like, this is amazing. Thinking about sexuality on the same path as creativity is fascinating. fascinating. I've never thought about it like that. But when I think about my creativity, it is a thing that I must do every week. I must be creative. Otherwise, I feel like I'm trapped. And so then thinking about sexuality piece, I want to tap into things that empower me. Period. And if that happens to be sexuality, I'm gonna freaking explore it. It is an important, like I think of things of all the superpowers us as women have that we don't tap into.
Yeah.
And when I think about sexuality, when I think about it's bringing confidence within ourselves, it's us knowing our body. Because how often do we ignore the signs that our bodies are trying to tell us that something's wrong? We just ignore it. Why? Because we haven't allowed ourselves time and space to tap into the signals. And when you talk about sexuality, if I could be just so blatant right now, I was like 15 the first time I took a mirror and actually looked at myself. Now, at 15, to not know my body well enough, to not understand myself, to not really tap into myself, I think is a missed opportunity for me to really own who I want to be, how I show up, how I feel, tap into my emotions, tap into my creativity and everything that you've just said.
No, absolutely. And I mean, we are literally sons of God and Goddess embodied in these bodies. So this body is sacred technology that is the housing for your spirit and soul. So that again is a click of changing the focus, how you eat, how you talk to yourself, what energy are you consuming? You know, everything is energy, whether it's a show you're watching or friends that you keep around you, or so that's a big global part of what we're doing here. We're embodying these bodies, and these mechanisms are miraculous. It's about coming into communion with yourself, as you were speaking, at these levels, and understanding that, you know, at the moment of climax, that you can direct this energy with intention. You can create an altar space, right? So you can prepare a sacred ritual space before you enter in. And it can be done either solo or with a conscious partner, but, you know, lots of things like, you know, offering flowers, anointing with oil, setting a sacred intention, eye gazing, being present with each other, and, you know, really understanding what you're dealing with. And there's a lot, like it's a whole field of changing, because on this planet, we have not been interacting with it in a divine way at all.
God, that's so beautiful. How much of that, and I didn't get to finish really asking you about it earlier, where you were saying that you have people look in the mirror to see themselves. So as we start to talk about how we get to know ourselves more, I definitely want to make sure that we tie that into your badass company and being an independent woman, because like as we go through this, identifying self through sexuality is so amazing and beautiful. And so if you don't mind actually explaining the tactic that you use, which you said earlier, where you look in the mirror.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to actually
This is really, like, for anybody watching, if you're, you know, you will find such immense transformation in this technique. So you just go into a mirror where you can sit in private, and, you know, the light could be low, you know, and you could have a candle sort of nearby, or, you know, just have low light and just find a way to relax and fix your gaze, you know, be comfortable and start to connect to your breath. So you're going to start to take long, deep fluid inhale, just drawing it up. And then you're going to pause at the top. And then you're going to take another exhale, and you're just going to let that go. And then you're going to pause at the bottom. And then you're going to fix your gaze in the mirror in your third eye point. And you're going to endeavor to keep your eyes open. You can do it with me here. We can do a little thing. So look at my third eye point, and then just try to keep your eyes open without freaking out about it, without stressing. And then your eyes you'll end up blinking them, and then just return. But see if you can stay still in your head and don't move your head. And just gaze at that point and breathe, connect to your breath, and you'll start to see some changes happening in my face, probably. And you'll start to maybe feel some sensations. So if you're doing this with yourself, it's quite different than if you're gazing in another. So when you do this with yourself, we can do this with partners and yoga and stuff. We would do it for a longer time. But if you do this with yourself as a dedicated practice, maybe start with 5-10 minutes a day and just do it. Do it for 21 days. Just 5 or 10 minutes, that's all.
And how does that help then? What is that exactly doing to you?
It will start to reveal the presence that is holding your life.
So you start to kind of go in and feeling yourself and acknowledging your body and connecting?
It's like a sort of maybe emerging with a witness presence. So sometimes in Tantra we call it second attention, where I can be talking to you during this interview, but my attention is on a greater aspect of who I am. So I'm here, but there's a much greater energy that is activated, I guess you would say. So without giving people, I don't want to interfere with someone's experience, but if you're curious, you should try it, because it will clear a lot of either emotion or resistance. We speak so horribly to our beautiful vessels. We're always telling our bodies that they're not quite the right one, that we wish they had blue eyes or brown eyes, or that we were curvier or skinnier or younger or whatever it is. And if you and I went to lunch, and if we spoke to each other the way that maybe we used to speak to our bodies, we probably wouldn't see each other again. But we talk to our own body like that every day. So it's really getting in tune with the fact that you are a sacred technology. And how do you want to speak to your body? How do you want to commune with your body? And how about just beginning by saying thank you? Like, thank you, I love you. Thank you for everything. And see, it's very counter, because, in spiritual practices or religions, we've been told that we're sinners, that we're not divine, that it's blasphemous to think that you're an aspect of God. But we are nature. We are nature. We don't have to go out into nature. We are nature. And nature is divine, and we are part of this ecosystem. We are a microcosm of the macrocosm. So it's this click. This is the main click that changes every other experience in life. So this connection to spirituality is the first point. It's not the 25th point. It's not the thing you do, the 100th point. It's the first point. And if you have the first point connected and you always go there, then everything else trickles from there. Then the relationship with yourself, then the relationship with your loved ones, then whatever you're doing. And this is really the basis for Shrimu. Shrimu is like a little play on divine cow, right? And it's an option. So it's universal. It's keto, paleo, gluten-free, dairy-free, plant-rich, and it rivals any dairy cheese. So it can be right on the board with your dairy cheese. Like, I'm not asking you to give up your love of cheese. I just made it better for your body, for the animals, for the planet, which ultimately means for our children. And, we can all agree that there is a lot of planetary destruction in the animal agriculture, and everyone has their own journey. My journey is one of open arms. I have a seat at my table for every human, anyone. And life is beautiful, and you never know who somebody is, and we just need more love in the world. We don't need more violence or more judgment. We just need more love.
Click here right now to heal from betrayal and find love that you deserve.
When someone hurts us or walks away from us, we believe that strength is showing that that didn't hurt us, or strength is getting over that faster than they